Doom 3 is probably one of the most overlooked games in the entire series. It was received very well when it originally came out, but has been kind of ruined by a number of newer fans coming in over the past couple of years, saying such insightful quotes, such as, "It's a good game, but it's not a good Doom game." But this video's not about Doom 3 really. Instead, it's about one of the expansion packs to Doom 3, called Doom 3 Resurrection of Evil. This, I feel, is one of the most forgotten Doom games in the whole series. No one talks about it, and that's why in this video I want to go through and explore Doom 3 Resurrection of Evil with you. And this should also be a trip down memory lane for those of you who've been around the channel since it first started, as Doom 3 Resurrection of Evil was one of the first things I ever covered here. However, I urge you not to go watch that video, as it's very bad. So yeah, let's kick off by talking about what this game actually is. It was developed by Nerve Software and released on the 3rd of April 2005, which is the same release date as the Xbox version of the game. Which, it's just not very good. But yeah, this was around a year or so after the original game released, and it was generally well received by critics and fans alike, which is funny because no one talks about it anymore. And yeah, Doom 3 was kind of an easy game, so going into this I wanted to give myself a bit of a challenge, so I put the difficulty up to Veteran instead of playing it on Regular. But in all honesty, I don't want to waste your time with this intro, as I want to just get straight into the video. So, here we go. Right after I clicked new game, I was immediately greeted with a very long loading screen, which is kind of weird considering that I'm playing on a high-end computer and this game came out in 2005. But when it eventually did load, we get greeted with a wall of exposition. The game pretty much just says that the UAC made a massive mistake on Mars, and all you really need to know is that a lot of people died and there was only one survivor, who was the main character that you played as during the campaign of Doom 3, who is not the main character in this game. But we'll get to that in a minute. It then goes on to say that some orbital probe thingy-majig found a signal coming from the Abandoned Mars Site Complex 1. No. Abandoned Mars Site 1 Complex. There we go. It goes on to say that the UAC then went and restarted their Mars research program. You'd have thought that they'd learned at least a tiny bit from the last time something like this happened, but nah. This is now being led by someone called Dr. Elizabeth McNeil, who is ginger and a doctor. I feel like she doesn't really have that much character throughout this game. But now that the text is all done, let's get to the— Oh my god, those cutscenes did not age well. Oh my god. Anyway, so these guys are Red Team.
We set up a red base here because they have a blue base over there.
And Red Team is looking for some artifact thing. And this artifact may or may not be a very powerful weapon that is extremely broken that you get to use during this game's campaign. Well, they find it in about 30 seconds by the way. And the player character this time isn't actually Doom Guy from the main campaign of Doom 3. Instead, it's some other guy. The guy from the main campaign of Doom 3 is probably locked up in a psych ward, kinda like Isaac was at the start of Dead Space 2. But yeah, back to our new main character. Right after they find the artifact, he decides it would be a really good idea to touch it as soon as they find it. We get a vision of Betruger, the villain from Doom 3's main campaign, telling these three Hell Knights with slight visual and gameplay changes to do something bad, I think. Oh, and your whole team dies. Our new Doom guy doesn't really care though, as we have bigger fish to fry, such as the army of lost souls— oh wait, sorry, they're called Forgotten Ones for some reason, that come to greet you. I think these count as a different enemy to the lost souls in Doom 3's main campaign, but those lost souls never show up again. And I feel like this is what the lost souls should have actually looked like in Doom 3's campaign, so I'm just gonna call it a lost soul. But yeah, the game is immediately better, as I found the shotgun as soon as it started in this secret here. In this first opening area, we also get introduced to a new mechanic, which is the battery and generator mechanic, where you have to find a battery and a generator, take it from that generator and put it in another generator. This is usually used to like turn on elevators and stuff to progress through the levels. After that, we find this guy here, and he kills an imp with its own fireball, using this game's attempt to rival Half-Life 2. It's called the Grabber, I know, creative. And it's actually pretty useful. But we'll see more of its uses in the game's next segment, so let's get to that. So, what I'm going to do from now on is I'm going to kind of summarise each major segment of the game. I was originally going to go through every level in the game, but the video was just way too long, so I had to rewrite the script. So yeah, here we go. Erebus is the first major area in the game, and it introduces us to quite a few new things. First up is the Vulgar. This is one of the DLC's new enemies, and I absolutely hate him. He is basically a harder to hit, faster, and more powerful imp with a smaller hitbox. And usually he can be found with a few other friends, which gets really annoying. He's my least favourite enemy in the entire game now, simply because they usually have you fighting them in packs. There's usually going to be a couple that'll spawn in front of you and one or two that spawn behind you, but you never usually realise that there's some behind you until they kill you. I feel like they're almost too quiet in the game, and it can get really irritating, especially when you keep replaying the same segment and dying because there's something behind you that you didn't even know was there. However, it is kind of balanced out by using the grabber to grab the projectiles and fire them back at them, as it does one hit kill them. A change that I actually really do like in this DLC is that all the locker codes in certain areas are now the same, and you just have to find one PDA. The reason I like this is not because it makes it easier in the game, it's more because you don't have to go through like millions of PDAs just to find the codes for each individual safe. Of course, there's still a lot of finding PDAs in this game, so you can open certain areas, but then it's also more interesting by having the battery and generator mechanic to also be there too, so that you're not just always finding PDAs and keycards. Oh, and in fact, there is one safe in specific that I'd like to talk to you about, because this safe has something amazing in it. And in this office here, within the safe, is in fact the super shotgun. And it's amazing, because the game gives you a large horde of zombies for you to blast your way through right after you get it. It almost feels like they're trying to make up for the super shotgun not being in Doom 3's main campaign, which is a massive L on their part. But at least we have it now, and this is honestly one of my favourite weapons in all of Doom 3, and I really wish it was in the main campaign. There's probably a mod that adds it to the main campaign, and in fact I might go look for that. The Erebus segment also has us fighting two of the game's 4 bosses, which are this Hell Knight with slight visual and gameplay changes, and this other Hell Knight with slight visual and gameplay changes. With the first one being very disappointing, as all you have to do is grab these blue things out of the air and fire them back at it using the grabber. I know it's the first boss, but it's still very underwhelming. However, this is made a lot better as you do now get the ability to slow down time using the artifact, which is absolutely broken in these opening areas. The second boss is again pretty disappointing. However, you do get to use your new ability with the artifact to kill him, as you have to slow down time and shoot him in his big exposed heart. It's a really good idea for a boss, I think, but it's kinda just had subpar execution. But after you kill him, you do also get the berserk added to the artifact, which makes it even more broken than it already was. Anyway, let's move on to... We now find ourselves in the Phobos Labs, and I honestly don't have a lot to say as there's not much new that's been introduced in this segment of the game. So for a lot of it we're trying to find Dr. McNeil, so that we can talk to her about the artifact and also what we actually need to do with it. Oh, and we also need to go do something with the main reactor so we can get this portal to work to go to the Delta Labs from the game's main campaign. As when we do talk to McNeil, she tells us that we need to go put the artifact back in Hell, as this will hopefully stop any more demon invasions from happening.
With the artifact though, as long as it resides in our dimension, there's always the danger of it being awakened, and then another invasion. It must be returned to the source of its evil in order to be destroyed.
And this is, mostly, no easy task. We fight through a lot of enemies to go do this, and now at this point in the game there's a lot bigger enemies starting to be introduced. This would include the Bruisers, the Hell Knights, and a few others. This segment has us riding trams to get to each part of the Phobos Labs and doing all sorts of stuff like shutting off the life support. Which actually didn't end up being a gameplay segment. I thought there was going to be a bit where you'd have to try and survive on really low oxygen for most of it, like there was in the main campaign. But no, you just turned off the life support and the voice, the AI for the facility, just said that the life support was going down and nothing actually happened. The main challenge with this area is again the enemies, but there's none as fearsome as our third boss. Guess what he is? Hell Knight with slight visual changes and slight gameplay changes. I'm just joking, he's a pushover. He is the hardest out of all of the Hell Knights with slight visual changes and slight gameplay changes, but he's still not a very difficult boss, and it only took me 2 tries to beat him. He shocks the floor with like electricity and stuff, and he also throws electricity at you, but I really just feel like he's a big, beefy Hell Knight with a few different attacks. The arena is pretty cool. There's this bit where you can go underground and recharge the artifact and pick up lots of ammo and health, but apart from that, this fight has nothing really that interesting in my opinion. Although to beat him you do have to basically shoot him until these big things open up, so you can blow them up and he dies. I'm not actually sure why he dies from that, because he seems like he was doing pretty fine at the start of the game without those big generator things being there. But, oh well, it's a decent gameplay mechanic I think. But the main thing to take away from this boss fight is that we are now invulnerable when we use the artifact. The game is officially broken. You now have slow motion, berserk, and invulnerability while you use the artifact. But yeah, now that we've went over that, we then make our way back to the teleporter, because all the power and stuff's back on. We then go in the teleporter and travel to... I'm doing Delta Labs and Hell in the same segment, as I don't really have a lot to say on either of them. So, after we go through that teleporter in the Phobos Labs, we end up back in Delta Labs from the main campaign, and most of the areas in this place are just recycled from the main campaign. It honestly kind of feels like they ran out of ideas, slash money, slash resources, slash anything to try and make new areas in the game. It is honestly not that bad though, as it does make sense with the game's story and what it's trying to do. However, it would have been nice to have some new areas on Mars to explore that we didn't get to see in the main campaign. But it doesn't really have that big of an effect on the game, so it's fine. This area does actually give us a lot more challenging enemies as well. This would include Hell Knights, Archviles, Bruisers, and more Vulgars. Lots more Vulgars. There's also these weird looking zombie guys, who I assume are the people who died during the Mars invasion. As we go through the Delta Labs, we teleport from place to place, going through these weird just bits of particles floating in the air. We go through more and more familiar places until we eventually get to a big teleporter that takes us right to Hell. The opening to the Hell segment is amazing. As soon as you spawn, you basically get ambushed by every enemy in the game, it feels like. And it gives you a brilliant chance to use your newly found BFG that I forgot to mention that we got in the Delta Labs. Hell does have quite a few highlights of gameplay, but it isn't that long. My favourite moments were I was in tight spaces fighting large enemies, or when I was in really big spaces fighting lots of enemies, like this bluish, greenish bit where I fought lots of Hell Knights and Mancubi. And yes, I did cheese it with the artifact. But due to the Hell segment being so short, we in no time get to the final boss of the game, who is Betrugger, and he is bigger and much angrier than he was in Doom 3. This is honestly the only legitimately challenging boss in this entire campaign, and even then he only took me about 20 to 30 minutes to beat him. And considering that this is on the second highest difficulty, it's kinda pitiful. The only bit that really killed me during my time trying to fight him was this bit where the asteroids come down from the sky. But other than that, there wasn't many of his other attacks that actually did much. To beat him, I kinda just spammed him with the BFG until he died. I mean, it is a Doom boss, you just kinda have to shoot him till he dies. Overall, I think he was the better of all the bosses in Doom 3 in general, and I actually did kind of enjoy it. I honestly feel like Resurrection of Evil is one of the most underappreciated games I have ever played, and I urge every one of you to go and play it. But I also do think that this probably should have been part of Doom 3's main campaign, and not a DLC, as the main campaign kinda just ended off on a cliffhanger after you killed the Cyber Demon, who should have been a mid-game boss. You never really got the satisfaction of killing Betrugger at the end of Doom 3, and I feel like this is kind of the ending we needed. But now that we're done with Resurrection of Evil, what do we do now? Well, as someone who very much underappreciated Doom 64, I went back and replayed it. So to find out if I actually like the game now or not, then I urge you to go and watch this video, right here, to find out.